The Adventures of Batman.
Welcoming you to the new adventures of Batman.
Welcome to episode 41 of Batmanimation, a Batman on Film podcast, revisiting the animated adventures of the Caped Crusader. I'm senior contributor Javi Trujillo, and returning to the Batmanimation cave once again is Patrick. You've got a lot of cats, Johnson. How are your holidays, Patrick? Did
That's
Santa
true.
leave? It is
Yeah.
true, right?
If 3 counts as a lot, then that's a lot. Yeah.
And we
Happy
say that-
holidays to you too, sir.
Thank you, man. We say you've got a lot of cats around the house all the time, even though we only have one right now. But it's just one of our favorite lines from the Batman. So
Well, whenever you can quote that, it's always a good time. That's for sure.
how were your holidays? Did Santa leave you anything Batman related under the tree?
Not under the tree. I got a Batman present. No. I take that back. I did get a couple pairs of Batman socks. So that was nice. And then a friend of mine who we always swap comic related gifts. He gave me the new McFarlane BTAS Batman that's got the shading, the cell shading on it. Yeah, I just got that the other day. So now I have to get the rest so I can put together Condiment Man. What about you? Did you get some Bat-related merchandise?
I got a Funko Pop Batman Christmas ornament.
Nice.
So he's like in like a robe and has like a little candle and all that, like he's going to bed.
So it's kind of like the Scrooge Pop?
Yeah. Kind of like that. But
Nice.
it's Batman.
Very good.
And Riddler Year One in hardcover, which I haven't read yet. I've only read the first issue because I was like, this is good enough that I had enough faith that it would be something worthy of the shelf.
Mhm.
So I just kind of waited. I'm like, I'll just wait till it's all done and in trade and read it as a collected version. Because you never know with these like special projects if there's going to be any kind of delay or, and then because then I read so much that I forget from
Right.
month to month sometimes. So it's like, I'll just wait till it's all done. And I mean, there's not really any spoilers because I saw the Batman. So I know how he ends up. So I've got that waiting for me to get to it. And something I told you about, I got the deluxe edition of Batman the Man Who Laughs.
Yes.
Which has a whole bunch of extras in it and stuff that I didn't even know was in there. So I'm excited to get to that too. I just been trying to keep up with some other things right now. And so it's kind of fallen by the wayside.
I'm with you. My read stack or pile is just tall now. And Riddler Year One is one of those that I have 4 of the 6 issues, and I have yet to start on it because of those missing issues. But like you, I'm probably going to get the trade. I prefer reading the trades anyway. It gets annoying to me to have to bust a comic out of the plastic with the tape and then read it for 5 seconds and put it back in, and then I just want the trade just to read it like a book. That's why one of the main reasons why I haven't got to it yet. But I'm overly excited to read that one.
And then my brother got me a Batarang. He went to like the Warner Brothers studio tours like over the summer and picked this up for me. It's like a replica of Christian Bale's Batarang from The Dark Knight Rises, and it comes in like a nice little window box that you can just have it on your shelf or mount it on the wall, and it lifts up and it holds the Batarang in by magnets, and the Batarang folds in half.
That's awesome.
It's really heavy and durable, and it's the like I always think of his Batarangs as like the flat shuriken type. But this is the slightly bigger one that you don't really see him use, but it's in like his little armory where it's kind of got like a bump in the middle of it in the bat.
Well, if someone broke into your house and you're in Texas, so I'm not going to assume that you have guns, but your state has a lot of guns.
They
Any
do.
you if you had to grab, this as a last resort, do you think you could knock someone out? How's your aim with
I think it would be okay. It's
this?
pretty heavy. It could do some damage, and the corners are very pointy. So, if anything else, it's something stabby.
Stabby.
Yeah.
Stabby batarang. That's one of the requirements. Well, that's awesome. I don't know that I've seen that yet, but, that sounds like a good, display piece at the very least.
Oh, and it's so much as much as I love the NECA 89 battering that came out like 2 years ago,
Mhm.
um, which also folds up, which is cool.
Yeah.
But that display stand, that joke of a display stand is like this cheap plastic. I can't even believe it's held up this long. That just says Batman on it. You can drop the batarang in it. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it probably cost them like $1 to make, if that, and it doesn't look very good. So,
I am
as a
familiar
display piece.
with the piece, but, not the stand, and that bataring's kinda pricey, so you would think they would give you a better, stand for that, but, it's cool to have, like, the batarang itself.
Yeah, for sure. So, we're here today, to talk about an episode I've wanted to cover for a long time. Justice League Unlimited's This Little Piggy. So this is from season 1 of the rebranded Justice League show and was episode 5, originally airing on August 28th, 2004, which means, man, we're almost at the 20th anniversary of the show,
Wow.
or this episode, which blows my mind. For those unfamiliar, the synopsis reads: when Cersei changes Wonder Woman into a pig, Batman and Zatanna must find her and change her back. And of course, the cast is led by Kevin Conroy as Batman Bruce Wayne, Susan Eisenberg is Wonder Woman, Jennifer Hale is Zatanna, Rachel York is Cersei, Jack Carter is Sid, Peter Honorati is Buona Beast and the Red Tornado, Lorraine Newman is Medusa, and Bruce Timm plays an uncredited husband, like he does. It was written by Paul Dini and directed by Dan Reba. Uh, the episode opens with Batman and Wonder Woman on a stakeout looking over both the Natural History Museum and the Iceberg Lounge, which are somehow next to each other now. What did you think of this pairing of Batman and Wonder Woman, maybe kind of sort of as a couple, which is something that was kind of played with at the time in the comics, off and on?
I like the pairing, and, I think it works really well for this episode. I think there's something to be said for Batman having a significant other that really can take care of him more so than him having to take care of someone like Catwoman or Vicky Vale or I like that dynamic, and, they make Wonder Woman very likable, and their dynamic works really well for this, I believe. For this,
You could say they're
series.
a dynamic duo.
Yeah. What about you? Do you like the romantic, undertones to what's happening here? Or overtones? It's pretty in your face.
Yeah, I do actually. I think it makes sense. There's a lot of times where Wonder Woman has been paired with like Superman as like a romantic relationship between the two
Mhm.
of them. I mean, we even had a Superman and Wonder Woman title in the New 52 that was about them dating. And and to me, like that's just because of their power set that they get put together.
Mhm.
I think from a character standpoint, like Princess of Themyscira and Farm Boy from Kansas, not a lot of common ground between the two of them. But again, Princess of Themyscira and the Prince of Gotham, like they're even though he's rich, I mean, he's basically Gotham royalty. And I feel like the way he was brought up, his emphasis on fighting, I think it's more in line with who Wonder Woman is as a character. Like they're warriors, but they want peace. And I feel like there's more character connection between the two, between Bruce and Diana, than there is between Bruce and Clark, just on a whole.
I
So
have to ag
I
I was
feel
gonna
like they
say I
just
have to
mesh
agree.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. I didn't think about it as the Prince of Gotham. As soon as you said that, thought of Turturro's line from Batman. Hey boys, you know who you got there? It's the Prince of Gotham. You know?
And even his predecessor, the now late Tom Wilkinson,
hmm
calls him and begins the Prince of Gotham. You
Did
have
he
to
call him that in
go.
Begins?
I think so. Unless
Okay.
I'm blending the two
Mhm.
movies together. I think he's like, he's the Prince of Gotham. You'd have to go, what is it, like
Oh, that's right.
5,000 miles where before someone wouldn't
Yeah.
recognize you.
No gun, I'm insulted.
Yeah.
So good, so good. That guy really played like Turturro didn't turn my stomach as much as the guy from Begins. Um, there's something about that he just when he says the thing about like his father begging like a dog before.
Oh,
Yeah, that's really
yeah.
he's turning that knife there. But
Yeah.
great performance.
Yeah. It's like the same character, but like two totally different takes. And both, I think, work really equally.
Yeah, I'm sorry to go off on a tangent away from, but I agree with you
I
on.
mean, that's what we do. We
Yeah,
talk Batman. So,
it tends to
um,
happen a lot on Batmanimation.
it does. Well, there's lots of connective tissue between all these different aspects of the character, which is fun to get into and talk about.
Yeah,
And actually, I'm curious, when did you first see this episode? Did you catch it like the day it aired, or was it like a DVD box set kind of thing?
it was definitely a DVD box set. I had gotten away from the cartoons for a while when I was living in New York for a little bit and couldn't keep up with my work schedule. And then I had a friend who loaned me the DVD box sets when I got back to Louisiana, and I had fun. And I was really surprised with this one. This one, some people might wonder why we're covering it on Batmanimation, but it's got a great one of probably the most important Batman scene in all of the Justice League, in my opinion, that happens at the end.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally concur. And one of the things that we look for is when it comes to these types of shows is it has to be focused on Batman because there's a lot of
Right.
Justice League where Batman is not the focus, but
Correct.
this is definitely a Batman centric episode. Um,
Yeah.
and this was something that I caught when it aired because back then we had direct TV. So I enjoyed Justice League. I thought I liked the widescreen aspect of it and the two-parter episodes and um but I think I prefer Unlimited because of the I like the serialized storytelling they were doing
Mhm.
and just the fact that it really opened up the DC universe with like characters that we didn't typically get to see at all, be it in animation or even in the comics, some who had kind of fallen by the wayside or were
Right.
on the way up, like the Question.
Right.
Just I really liked just how this show opened up the DC universe as a whole um and gave you these like different offbeat episodes. Like they adapted the For the Man Who Has Everything, which is a Superman story that was written by Alan Moore. Um, and like I can't think of any other show that we would have gotten like this specific episode because there's so many aspects of the broader DCU. Even though it starts off here in Gotham with Intergang is after the Rosetta Stone as the MacGuffin, and Intergang is more of a Superman problem. But here we're Batman and Wonder Woman, and we get like these great moments of like Wonder Woman saying, "No dating for the Batman. It might cut into your brooding time." And as they're on this stakeout at the Iceberg Lounge that's next to the museum, an alarm goes off, only to find a common thief. Only there's nothing common about her because it's Cersei. Um, and Batman is like, "Yeah, I've read the Odyssey," and and it turns out she's on probation from the pits of Tartarus on condition that she leaves Queen Hippolyta alone. However, the powers that be made no stipulation on her daughter Wonder Woman. Um, are you familiar with the comics version of Cersei? Do you feel like this is a good match for Batman to fight?
I'm not familiar with the comics version, but I do like the fact that they use so much Greek mythology in this episode. So you get a little bit of the kids may not catch some of the references unless they've had the class before, and so you get a little
Actually
bit.
read the Odyssey, yeah.
Right, right. I remember reading. We would read excerpts of the Odyssey in like grade school and stuff. And so a lot of these references I remember from back then, but you definitely get a little bit of literature for the adults in the room. Um, I am not familiar with the DC version of this character. And this one thing I liked about Justice League Unlimited is if I wasn't familiar, they would introduce me to certain characters, and I thought she was cool. I really liked the performance of Cersei, Rachel York. She knocks it out of the park, and I was wondering if they ever got her to do any other voicing for the DC animated projects. And since she was or maybe still is, a Broadway star, I mean, her delivery is outstanding.
Yeah, and she brings like a level of showmanship that
Hmm.
the comic iteration doesn't have, to my recollection. It's been a while since I've read those like 2000s Wonder Womans, but um I definitely was familiar with her, but this is just a heightened version of that. And typically I wouldn't say that she would be a good match for a Batman story. But this isn't a Batman story per se, it's a Justice League story. So they get away with it, I think. But just barely.
Yeah. Well, it all ties together nicely at the end.
Yeah.
To You might think, why is Batman involved? And then you realize, oh, okay, for the big punchline at the end.
So after Cersei transforms Wonder Woman to a pig, hence the title, Batman turns to Zatanna for help. Um, and there's a great final shot before we go to the main titles where Batman's surprise face of what happened to Wonder Woman reminds me of Norm Brayfogle art. Like there's just something about like his exaggerated expression that just looked really Brayfogle. So I wanted to point that out because maybe Ryan Lauer will listen to this and maybe he'll go back and see the same thing.
That's a good
Um,
call. Brayfogle did have a certain particular style of drawing Batman's expressions, and that I didn't catch that, but you're spot on there. Good call.
so we see Batman and Zatanna's friendship in the 1993 BTAS episode Zatanna, obviously,
Mhm.
where she was voiced by Julie Brown. Um, how did you rate Hale's performance here, and what did you make of her relationship with Batman?
I like Hale's performance. I like the way they wrote her too, because it kind of seems like she has an attraction to Batman that was never come to fruition. Like maybe there was something back in their history. So she plays it like she mentions that they're good friends, but there's nothing further past that. So it's a little bit playful, a little bit seductive. I liked her performance. Comparing it to the girl in the BTAS, I don't have a frame of reference. I'd have to go back and watch that episode. But I enjoyed Jennifer's performance. What about you?
Um, I I thought Julie Brown was really good as Zatanna in the original incarnation, but
Mhm.
I mean Jennifer Hale, who I became from, she's done a myriad of voice roles, but I mean I primarily knew her from the Spider-Man cartoon, the '90s version, I should say,
Okay.
where she was Black Cat, and then she went on to do Mary Jane and some of the things. And I mean Jennifer Hale is everywhere as an actress, so I really liked her Zatanna, and it's Zatanna's a Dini favorite. Um, he's written several appearances of her with Batman, even done a mini series with Zatanna. So I really like any time that he writes these characters. He's done like just so many different stories with her solo or her and Batman. There's some really great detective comic stories with the two of them where it does have that undercurrent of like there's an attraction, but they never really took it to the next level.
Right.
Um,
I think
but
everyone has a little bit of a crush on Zatanna.
yeah,
Like everybody that I ever talk to or mentions, they always bring her up in there when they talk about certain female characters in the DC universe. And um, there's even a comic book where it's Nightwing's birthday, and Zatanna. You may have seen this one. She gives him a kiss for his birthday, and she says, "Happy birthday, boy wonder." And he leans in and he says, "Say it backwards."
I have not read that one. I'm gonna have to find that.
You can find that one. It's pretty good. But yeah, I think she nails it. Jennifer, that is.
Yeah. Um, I just Deanie has such a good sense of her characterization. And he's actually married to a magician too, so that probably helps.
Hmm.
But her gimmick, which is her spells being what she wants said backwards,
Hmm.
like I've always had a problem with it. Not in the comic, but for me, it doesn't work as well in animation or live action as it does like seeing it on the printed page. It's like because you
Yeah,
can read it and
you
then you
can.
just look at it backwards and figure it out.
Right.
But hearing it, like I can't figure that out.
Yeah, no.
Like it's just gibberish to me. And I just kind of watch to see what happens. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Unless you put on the subtitles, maybe it spells it backwards. I haven't checked. But even
Hmm.
the character's been on Smallville, played by Serinda Swan, and it's like she looks great and she acts great, but
Hmm.
like the spell casting portion of it, like part of the fun is reading it in the comic, and that's just
Right.
something you don't get in a live action medium or an animated medium.
Maybe it would have helped if they would have descrambled it at the bottom of the screen so that you knew what she was saying when it's, you know, cab ot lamron, which is back to normal. Maybe if they had
Right.
back to normal at the bottom, it would have been easier for us. But yeah, you're right. It's just gibberish. My old band, I used to introduce myself. And I would say, we all used to do it. The whole band would introduce themselves saying their names backwards. So I would say, "Hello, my name is Kirtap Naznahaj. Nice to be here." And then everyone, every band member would say that, would say their own version. It was always fun.
Nice.
Always got a good laugh.
But I appreciate the intimacy that she has with, like, Bruce, who wants to keep this matter obviously as private as possible because that's who he is, and he doesn't wanna have, not only that vulnerability for himself, but he's also trying to protect, Wonder Woman's privacy in this really awkward situation,
Right.
because it's not like she's a pig but can talk or have, like, some sense of things, like, there's a basic understanding, but she's still just really a pig and wanting to do pig things.
Right.
So, he wants to keep that embarrassment away from her as much as possible.
I wondered about that as I was watching the show about how, because she, at the end, she indicates that she was aware of everything that was happening, but couldn't control her, I guess, pig instincts maybe were kinda taking over. But she was smart enough to be able to block bullets with her
Yes.
magic
Yeah.
bracelets later on.
Yeah, she can still use the bracelets in pig form, which is awesome.
Right.
It's here though the episode pauses for a song and dance number, which is, the song "Lulu's Back in Town," and it just comes out of nowhere with, like, no context. Like, the scene
Right.
shifts, and then all of a sudden, like, Cersei is singing this big production. Did this take you out of the episode?
Not after you hear what happens later on with Medusa and about her jealousy of her 3 sisters, the sirens, and her wanting to sing. That it totally makes sense to me. I will say that when I heard production wanted to change the name to Cersei's Back in Town, but um, the higher ups would not allow that, and they said they can't change the lyrics. I mean, that would have made a lot. It would have been a lot better and made a lot more sense. But I
Yeah,
guess maybe Warner Brothers didn't own the rights to it, like they did later on. We find out that "Am I Blue" was in their catalog of songs they owned, so they could just do what they want with that. Um, but
which is
yeah,
often how these things go, right? It's like, "Oh,
right,
we own this, so it's cheap. Let's do that."
absolutely. And but it didn't bother me too much because her performance is so good. And whenever Batman in Batman cartoons, they get a chance to do a song and dance number, they throw it in there. I mean, just think about the, Brave and the Bold episode,
The Music Meister,
Music
yeah.
Meister, thank you. The whole episode is a musical, and it's great. So I didn't have a problem with it, but it took me a second to realize why, and then they explain it, and it's fine.
Yeah.
But a
Like if
little
you give it some
context ahead of time would have probably
right.
been easier.
Batman and Zatanna visit like I guess a magic shop, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
And that's where they kind of lay the foundation of the climax, because the elements of magic come with a price, which I thought was kind of like a clever way of working in what's going to be the solution, but still, like they're giving it to you ahead of time, like letting you know and just laying the groundwork for it, um, making what happens at the end, a little more palatable
Right.
when Batman realizes what he has to do.
This
And
uh,
we,
this this part the part of the magic shop is where I started questioning certain things about Wonder Woman's evolution into a pig. It's because they wanna get her to the slaughterhouse, but as to why she runs off, I guess the magic spell they're trying scares her into running off, but it didn't make sense to me as to why she ran off, but I know that you know, they had to let her escape so that the chase ensues and she ends up they want the drama of the slaughterhouse at the end. But that was my only real question when I was rewatching it like a couple times. I was like, why did she run off? But it's just a plot device, I guess.
yeah, we mentioned this before briefly, but one of the strengths of the JLU series is its deep roster of characters.
Hmm.
And despite trying to keep things on the DL, Buona Beast, Red Tornado, Crimson Avenger, and one of Bill Ramey's favorite stretchy guys, Elongated Man, get recruited when Wonder Woman slips away during the magic shop scene that we just talked about. Who's your favorite leaguer who came to help?
Well, these are a very interesting group they put together. I like the kind of 1950s robot voice of Red Tornado. It's funny.
Suey.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that gave me an audible chuckle to have him in that robot voice say that. Um, the elongated man, I wanted to ask you, the young lady he's talking to, was that a cameo of Sue Digby? Is like soon his wife?
I don't remember that. I remember him going to it was him that went to the house with the married couple, right?
No, that was Crimson Avenger.
That was Crimson Avenger. Okay.
And that's where you get Bruce Timm's cameo because he says, looking for this pig, and he says, Gladys, it's for you,
Right,
you know,
right.
which was another
Okay.
chuckle moment. Um,
I don't remember the scene you're talking about, which
So
I thought.
elongated man, he's up on there's a young lady who's typing on a typewriter or something like
Mhm.
that, or a computer, and he's outside the window and he stretches his arm in with the picture and says, "Have you seen this? Looking for this person," or something. And I don't know if she
Uh,
audibly speaks, but I was wondering if that was a nod to, is she a blonde? Is Sue Digmy a blonde?
no, Sue is a brunette
Okay,
and
all right.
his wife.
Mhm. Yeah. I remember
So,
from, it was called Final Crisis, where they killed her.
uh,
Is that right?
Identity Crisis.
Identity Crisis. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Final Crisis was the Grant Morrison
Yeah.
meta.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to what word should come after that.
Yeah.
It
But
was Grant Morrison's like, "This is it," and then did Multiversity
right.
afterwards.
Yeah, Final
So,
Crisis Part 2.
yeah.
No. I would say that my favorite, though, was probably Wannabes, just because he's such a weird character, and anytime you can throw him in is funny, and, they wanted to go with a Sylvester Stallone voice, which is why his voice kinda sounds like that.
Oh,
Um, but it's kind of like lukewarm Stallone, like, not fully on. But he's funny, and, it reminds me of the, Teen Titans Go, episode where he shows up and Cyborg goes, "Want a better name is what you want."
that's right.
So, but yeah, he was funny. There is an instance though where he goes to the slaughterhouse, he's sitting amongst these pigs trying to communicate with them, and then he just sorta gives up. You don't see what happens. He's sitting in, and then they cut to the inside of the slaughterhouse, and you don't see him again. So I'm like, "Okay, I guess he spoke to the pigs, didn't get what he was looking for, and just left." It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I thought the scene you're talking about where he tracks Wonder Woman down to the pig farm/slaughterhouse, that is like right in the heart of Gotham City. Did that create a sense of jeopardy for you, or is that scene just for laughs?
um, this whole episode is kind of for laughs for me, and they wanted to go a full slapstick version based on the commentary that I heard, and then so you just get sort of a strange episode that has a lot of humor kind of spliced throughout. I didn't really get the sense of jeopardy, maybe a little bit, but no. What about you? Or was it for laughs for you?
I mean, it's always kind of hard when you have, your main character in jeopardy because there's always the it's not really going to happen because we have to have more episodes type thing.
Sure, sure.
Um, so I think it did play more as like a laugh. It's just kind of like the exaggeration of everything that's going on. Like it just kind of leaned into that more than created any sense of like palpable tension.
Right, and especially when you had the well, I guess the workers, the butchers, they're making jokes like "That'll do, pig," and
Right.
at
At the
one
bait
point they
reference.
said, I think they said "runaway meat" at one point, or "escaped meat," and they were chasing after her. So they had a lot of. Uh, and then, did you notice that the butchers, the blood stains on their aprons were orange instead of red?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, they're toning it down, but we get the idea of what's happening, so it's fine.
And they're not really supposed to be bad people. They're not like
Yeah,
villains. They're not henchmen or anything, but they come off as really malevolent.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's kind of weird how they get villainized a little bit.
Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, I
Yeah.
totally see. They're just doing their job, though. You're right.
Yeah. I do have to give a shout out though to Elongated Man. He would be my favorite leaguer that came in to help just because I'm a big Flash fan, so I have a soft spot for Ralph Dibny.
Yeah, I think
But I
his first.
also liked seeing Red Tornado.
Mhm.
Um, and that's from like superpowers. Like my cousin had that figure when we were growing up. So when the toys started coming out for Justice League Unlimited, and there were so many toys, like I definitely picked up a Red Tornado figure just because I wanted one like 20 years prior when I was a kid.
I concur. I really I've always enjoyed Red Tornado. I have his first appearance, which is like Justice League number 60 something or something like that, in the 1960s. I think he's just a cool character, and he's he's great. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Data from Star Trek: Next Generation, with him trying to
Yeah.
understand humanity. And if you've ever seen the Santa Claus or the Christmas episode of Brave and the Bold, where I think it's a Christmas episode where he's trying to understand Christmas or something like that. I think it's called The Case of the Secret Santas, something like. And there's another episode, I'm not sure if it's the same one, where he creates a son and is trying to have a relationship with a robot son or android son, which is really interesting.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, definitely. It's from Brave and the Bold if you haven't seen it. I could be
Okay.
mixing up the episodes a little bit, but they're good watches.
Is he in Young Justice too, or was that just the comic book? Because I haven't watched all of Young Justice yet.
I saw the first 2 seasons. I don't remember him being in the Young Justice show. If he was, it
Okay.
didn't leave an impression on me.
Well, before this becomes Red Tornado-mation, uh, we're gonna put a slight pin in this episode just to have a brief word from our sponsors. And we're back. So, despite all the supernatural elements that this episode brings in, I think we should mention that there's a degree of detective work and interrogation to it as well, particularly when Batman and Zatanna go question Medusa. Did you enjoy how that scene played out with like Medusa serving as a stoolie for a reduced sentence?
Absolutely, and remind me a lot of the Clash of the Titans from when I was a kid.
Yes.
I saw that
Yeah.
I'm old enough to say that I saw that in the theater in 1980.
The
One
original,
yeah, once or twice.
not the
Um,
Terminator remake one.
the funny thing is that, the guy who plays, Perseus, I believe it's Perseus in Clash of the Titans, I can't remember the name of the actor right now, but,
Harry
uh
Hamlin?
yes, Harry Hamlin. I was just, in an episode of, Mayfair Witches, and he was on set, so it's really cool to see, like, some of your heroes from your
Nice.
youth, like, in
Yeah.
person and be able to work, maybe not with them directly, but on the set. And, Lorraine Newman, just blew me away. If this is the same Lorraine Newman from 1970s, SNL that got her start, uh, I just I was floored that she was Medusa because I remember watching her in some I'm not old enough to have seen those episodes, but later on, watching her, she was always, like, really thin actress. You
She's
remem
got some great lines in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she wants her curling iron back from Cersei, which and, her whole, like, "Freedom in 4010, ring a ding ding." Like,
Yeah. And she kind of plays the voice a little over the top, because she
yeah,
gets it really down here, and I'm Medusa with the snakes on my head.
yeah.
And, it was almost I mean, it is played for laugh, but, yeah, I really enjoyed her performance. I thought it was appropriate, humor for this episode.
And what does she call Cersei? Like, Sea Girl or something like that?
Not sure, but
She has some nickname for her that sounds very like prison, orange is the new black type of slang, I don't know.
I did wanna ask you, she said those statues outside the amphitheater, that's my work, and when you get to the amphitheater, there are 3. Are we to assume those are the 3 sirens, which are cousins to Cersei?
Oh, maybe. I didn't think of that, but that's a possibility.
I thought about that, like, the last watch as she was talking about
Huh. No, that's
but
an
that's funny too,
interesting.
her like, "Yeah, that's my work. Those statues out
Yeah.
front."
Yeah, so Batman and
I would
Zatanna
have to go
had.
back to see if the 3 Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I would have to go back and see if they are 3 female
Right, if
statues and
or
none
if
of
they're
are
just.
male, but
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
mean to interrupt.
definitely. Oh, no, you're good. It's definitely worth checking out, I think.
Yeah.
Now I'm kinda curious. But they Batman and Zatanna head to that amphitheater at, Mykonos to confront Cersei, and it's all been building up to this, and they interrupt her during her set, and Cersei's got, like, this great it's going back to what we are talking about, right? Like, there's the dramatic side, and they're balancing it with the comedy, and they're attacking Cersei, and she's, like, trying to get out, like, this whole, "You dare to strike Cersei," but she only gets, like, "You dare to," and she keeps getting hit and interrupted, and
Until she finally has to say, "Quit it!"
yeah,
That made me laugh.
and
So good.
the yeah, the whole thing is it's just so funny. And she turns the patrons into animals, to fight for her, and this goes on for just a little bit, and then Batman recalls the words of the shopkeeper and asks what he would have to give for Diana to return to normal, and so Cersei replies with, "I want something from you that's very precious, something you've worked very hard to conceal, something when gone you can never regain, something soul-shattering." And what is it? Did you have any idea when you watched this for the first time that this was where it was going?
Well, before the reveal, I'm glad you paused here because when I first saw this, thought was, "Oh, she wants to know his identity now. She wants to know who Batman is, and that's what he wouldn't be able to get back." What was your first thought before the next scene? So to answer your question, I had no clue.
I think I was probably wondering if, she was gonna make him have to kill to, do some kind of sacrifice, because that's like the line that Batman won't cross unless
Mm.
it's Ben Affleck. So, sorry. Or
Oh,
Michael Keaton.
whenever
I'll be
you get a
fair. I'll
chance.
be fair. Um, you know, uh, I think that's probably where my brain was with it 20 years ago, that he would have to take a life and,
Yeah,
because that's been played with a lot, especially like that's like the whole point of Nightfall
right.
is, Asbats kills Abattoir, and that's not something Batman would do. So
Right.
that's what I think, it was probably leading to. I certainly wouldn't have guessed that it is what it is. Do you want to go ahead and say what Batman has to do?
Sure. He has to sing. Sing for the crowd, sing for Cersei, sing for Zatanna, and it is fantastic.
Oh, so good.
So
And
good.
and it just, at this point, like we've had Batman in the kind of dark blue and gray, and then he went to black, and then for Justice League, it's more back to like the black and blue coloring for the black parts of his
Mhm.
costume. So, but having there's like a little meta extra of like, am I blue? It's like, well,
Thank
is
you.
he blue and gray or is he
Thank
black
you.
and gray?
If you hadn't brought it up, I was going to. This is the he's sad because he's like, "Am I really blue?"
Yeah.
It's
Well,
definitely a good metaphor going on here.
yeah.
So good.
And it's
And
such a
can we
crime that the go ahead.
no, no, no. And I'll punch in.
I say it's such a crime that there's not a full version of this released somewhere for you to like buy on iTunes or Spotify or
They
I'm sure
did
the whole thing is just beautiful.
they did release this as a single, but it's a different version. And
Oh,
he actually starts off in a little bit I think he starts off an octave higher. So this one, he's, "Am I blue?" Starting real low and sounds awesome, but in the release that I found, it's, "Am I blue?" He's I'm not even hitting it, but he's like an octave higher, you know?
and that
But
came out when the episode came out?
no, they released that later, from what I
On
understand.
on what format?
Let me see.
Is there an actual physical release? Because then I'm gonna have to find this.
I don't know, but I tell you what, I'll research it
There we go.
and
Get
let you
back
know
to me
afterwards.
on the
Yeah,
next episode.
yeah, I don't wanna, I'll punch it up on the Facebook group, see what I
Cool.
can find.
Yeah, that'd be good. Um, so in the middle of his singing, though, it gets interrupted, and Cersei's like, "He can stop now," but Zatanna replies back with a "Not on your life," and it's like, I'm right there with Zatanna, like, "No, I wanna keep hearing this." Um, and it's I don't know, because I mean, so it winds up being that the whole thing he's worked hard to conceal, Precious, is like his identity of, criminals are a superstitious, cowardly lot, and having Batman sing takes away from that intimidation and fear that he's trying to create that persona.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think it really at the end of the day, as the series goes on, like it doesn't make him any less Batman, right?
No, in fact, he
Um,
seems to be a little proud of it at the end, whenever he
yeah.
talks to Zatanna. Did you catch the nod to who they're referring to when he said, "I was on stakeout and I heard that song, 100 times?"
Yeah, he learned the song when Penguin tried to kidnap a singer and he was on
Mhm.
stakeout for a month.
Right,
But
and sh
who the singer was, I don't recall.
Zatanna says Ricky something, and they're referring to Ricky Nelson released a version of this in 1957, and
Oh,
there is no evidence to that I found online. I just as soon as I heard that, that was my first guess, so I looked up, did Ricky Nelson sing? Yes, 1957, so I'm assuming that's who they're referring to.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's a little more of a pop version. Am I
Yeah, not this
blue? Am
more
I blue? Yeah, it's a little sped up. Yeah, not such a straight standard as we hear in this version, this, episode.
interesting. And it it hit differently this time too. I've been on a little bit of a Conroy kick between we just did Mask of the Phantasm last month for the 30th anniversary, and I've been replaying or been playing Return to Arkham City. I so I mean, basically replaying Arkham City, but now I'm playing the HD version of it.
Okay.
Um, and just wrap that up, and I'm just gonna jump into Arkham Knight again so I can play as the Batman. But just been hearing a lot of Conroy recently, and it's just, you get to that scene, it's like, wow, it's just weird to believe that, it's been a year since he's been gone, and we have just thinking about it in general, like we have one performance left, which is the Suicide Squad game, which is going to be interesting from what I've heard. Uh,
Wasn't he used for the Caped Crusader? Didn't he voice Batman for that hasn't, come out yet, or did they voice someone else or use someone else?
they haven't announced the cast. He's listed, I think, on IMDb, but that might just be like playing Thomas Wayne or something like he's done before, you
Okay.
know. Because yeah, there's nothing official on who is Batman in that or what his involvement ultimately is going to be in that. But as far as we know, right now on January 17th, 2024, like Suicide Squad, I think is it for him. Unfortunately,
It's sad, definitely gone too soon.
yeah.
Talent on 2 legs, that guy, I tell you what.
But man, what a performance in
You
not just this episode, but I mean everything.
If you ever when I hear people talk about, in live action when they wanna get some big beefy guy to play Batman, and I think about a situation like this, where that's why they get someone who knows how to act to play Batman, someone like Kevin Conroy. I mean, I know it's just in animation, but he did play him in live action too, and I think he could have played him in live action, when he was young,
Yeah,
'cause he was a handsome guy. That's why
yeah.
you get an actor, because you get stuff like this. Like, who knew that Kevin Conroy was gonna knock this out of the park singing "Am I Blue," but when you think about him, he went to, what's that school, where he was
Juilliard.
Juilliard, yeah. You're gonna learn to sing, dance, and act, and probably play music all at the same time there. So, that's why you get an actor to play a role like Batman instead of a big beefcake, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and just the range that he brings, not just in this episode, which definitely is a different challenge for him, but how he portrayed the character in BTAS versus Batman Beyond to the Arkham games, and then to like dial it down in a different direction for Justice League Action, like just so many different shades uh, that he brought to this character, and just Batman in general, like there's so many there's so many different interpretations and they're all kind of valid, you know?
Absolutely.
And it's remarkable that we get to see that from one person, um, because he definitely did he even did a Scooby-Doo episode as Batman.
I remember. Yeah, it was a
Uh,
recent episode, right?
yeah, Lauer, I believe, covered it on this show,
I think
and
that was
it's
the first Batmanimation podcast was that episode.
yeah, so it's I mean, it just the character is so you can do so many different things with him, so I'm glad that we're getting to highlight this not really seen I mean, people have seen this episode, but this aspect of Batman and him singing, like, I'm glad we're getting to talk about it because it is, I think, a high watermark
Yeah.
for the character in animation.
Who do you think has more hours as Batman under his belt, Adam West or Kevin Conroy?
It's gotta be Conroy.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Between Batman, the animated series, and Beyond, and the 4 seasons of Justice League, and then Justice League Action, and
mhm.
Adam West had 3 seasons of a show, and then 3 well, no, I was gonna say, and then 3 movies, 2 of which were animated, but no, because he was in that one animated show in the '70s. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so he's had he also played Batman in, Justice League Galactic Super Friends of Galactic Guardians.
Yeah,
They swapped him out. So he has
and then he's done little cameos too in, like,
mhm.
Brave and the Bold and in he was in The Batman,
Yeah, he was the
right?
mayor. He was either the
He was
mayor
the
or he
mayor, right?
was or no,
Yeah,
he
he
may have
was the
been
mayor and the Riddler was Hugo Strange, right? Or am I confusing them?
Well, I'm not sure if West was the mayor or if he was Commissioner Gordon in the Batman. Mine's playing tricks on me at this
I
point.
think Gordon was Mitch Pileggi,
Okay,
I think. It's been a
that
minute.
makes sense.
But you know what? The Batman is gonna be focused the animated show. We're gonna
Mhm.
probably be hitting that hard on this series for this year as that's celebrating a 20th anniversary. So stay tuned to future episodes of Batmanimation, and we'll figure out who Jim Gordon is in real time.
West also played in Beware the Gray Ghost. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. Yeah. So
He's
actually
all
that
over
would
the
be
place.
that's a math project for somebody. Is add up how many minutes Adam West is devoted to the Batman universe as a whole and chalk it up with Conroy. Because I thought Conroy would be the slam dunk, but now that we're talking about it, I'm like, oh no, Adam West is a lot more prolific than I think of offhand. So
Also, Brave and the Bold. He plays Thomas Wayne
yeah,
in an episode where he's dressed up in the Batman.
where Conroy's the Spectre. Or no, Phantom Stranger.
Right.
Hamill's the Spectre, Conroy's the Phantom Stranger.
I believe you're correct. I think that was dark something is Chill of the Night episode.
Yeah.
Great
It's one of the
episode.
best ones.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, getting back to the episode. That's okay. Wonder
Tangents
Woman
are us.
that's right. Wonder Woman gets free of her enchantment right before she's about to be slaughtered, and, Batman and Wonder Woman reunite at the Watchtower, and it's just the perfect ending. She hums "Am I Blue" as she walks off, and it leaves Batman with a bemused smirk on his face. How did the ending land for you?
Well, my question is who told her? Because she wasn't there. She didn't hear that performance. So I'm thinking maybe Zatanna
Oh,
took her
yeah.
aside and said, "This is what happened," and then she hummed it. I
Yeah,
thought it
I
was
can't Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I thought it was a great ending, exactly what it needed.
Yeah, I can't picture Cersei, you know, divulging that to her. Like, I can't think of any situation where she would bring that up
Mhm.
necessarily, you know? It seems more plausible where, like, Zatanna would be like, "Hey, this is what Bruce did for you. You know, this is how much you mean to him because he's not gonna tell you himself,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna tell you to kinda, like, help things along."
Yeah. Maybe
So,
Zatanna's rooting for their relationship or something.
yeah. 'Cause I think she would, just want him to be happy, first and foremost, so
Sure.
but yeah, I love the ending of this episode. It's a nice little capper, and it's not often that you get to see that kind of a look on Batman's face and to have it work.
Right.
So I thought it was a perfect end to a fun little story.
I have to agree, and had they not gotten to the point where Batman sings as the, uh, coup de grace or whatever you wanna call it, pièce de résistance, then it wouldn't this episode wouldn't have a lot of impact, but everyone remembers this episode because of that, no matter
Yeah,
what. If they're a fan of the show, that
yeah. That I think for me, the song elevates it to a different level and makes it one of those hallmark episodes.
absolutely. And if I had to, out of the Justice League series that predates this and Justice League Unlimited, if I had to pick one sequence that is the most memorable for me personally, it's the him singing. And you're right, the capper at the end with her knowing and humming is great. And then you get the little smirk on Batman, which ties it up nicely.
Yeah, it's not often that we see, the more modern style of Batman smile. I can't really think of a whole lot of examples. I mean, the one that immediately pops into mind is like Val Kilmer after he visits Chase Meridian, and she's like, "Oh, I love Bruce Wayne instead," you know.
Mhm.
Um, but I feel like it works for this episode, and because it's a private moment, and he's like alone in the corridor on the watchtower,
Mhm.
and for an episode that is full of hijinks, I think it's a nice little button at the end of it.
Right. And Batman smiling today is more like a smirk. than a smile. Like in the 50s, you see him
Right.
smiling all the time, you know? But when
Yeah.
they got him back to his dark and serious roots, then it's sort of like a he's amused type of smirk, type of thing. Unless you get the end of the Killing Joke where he's laughing just
Ugh.
hysterically with the Joker. Is that a sore spot?
Yeah. No, it just that moment has caused quite a bit of controversy in, the last decade or so
Right,
after the
I
deluxe edition came out.
mhm.
So, I feel like
I'm
that's
assu
that's been talked a lot about recently.
right, right, okay, so I'll leave that tangent alone.
Well, no, I mean, we didn't hear your take on it. I'm actually kinda curious how you felt about it.
Well, um, you're gonna go with the Grant Morrison idea that he kills the Joker. That works, but also it leaves it up to you that it's possibly that they just laugh off into the sunset or moonlight as it is, because I believe it's night. I'm a fan of the original book. It and I don't like any of the other versions that have come. I just like that original story, and I didn't see it when I read it. I never thought that he actually killed the Joker, but if he does, and that's the last Batman story according to Alan Moore, that's okay too. Not necessarily a fan of him killing the Joker, but if there's one instance where he deserved it, that would be the one. But I never read it as him killing him. What about you?
I never did either. I just kinda thought it was, offbeat ending, especially
Yeah.
because think I wanna say I read it after I read, Death in the Family,
Okay.
which, comes out it mentions the Killing Joke. So, I never obviously took it as him being killed at the end because he had to kill Robin next. So,
Right. Right.
you know,
It's one of
it's
those
just one of
ambiguous
those things
endings,
that yeah,
like The Thing. Who's the Thing at the end of The Thing? Is it McCready, or is it, Keith David, or either
these
of
are
them? So
questions.
so, leaves it up to you, and
Yeah,
that's
it's
fine.
like, do they actually survive or
Yeah.
do they freeze to death out there? Like, it's such a
Well,
good
according
movie.
to Dark Horse Comics, you can read the part 2.
I was gonna say, yeah, isn't there like a sequel coming out?
Mhm. And John Carpenter liked, the
The
comic book
prequel?
sequel. He liked the comic book sequel that Dark Horse did, and said if he
Okay.
ever did a sequel to the movie, he would, have done it, there. I saw the prequel, and it wasn't that bad.
Never got around to it.
Well, you can't think about it in terms of the original.
Yeah,
You just gotta think of it as a nice little companion piece,
fair enough.
but, like, doesn't touch the original. But I'm sorry to keep going on tangents. It's just been one of those days.
Hey, it's all good, man. Do you have any, final thoughts, though, on this Little Piggy?
The only thing I can
Anything we didn't
say
touch
that it
on?
if you haven't seen it, I would definitely check it out. I would probably grade it maybe like an A minus. What about you?
Yeah, it's definitely one of my most rewatched Justice League or Justice League Unlimited episodes just because it's just fun, you
It
know?
is fun.
And, since this is unlimited, um, it's a self-contained episode, really. So it's not a two-parter. Just pop it in for 20 minutes while you're having lunch or eating breakfast or, just need a quick Batman fix.
Mhm.
Um, so it's just one of my go-to episodes, you know?
Yeah. You said you've been wanting to do this one for a long time. Is that why? Just because it's one of your favorite?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just a matter of like getting it in there and getting it added to the schedule because there's so many when it comes to the show, there's just so many different avenues to go down and trying to spread out the love equally because it'd be so easy to just do BTAS
You're right.
or, one of the other shows, but
Mhm.
trying to trying to make it as diverse a show as possible.
Well, one of these days, I'm gonna talk somebody into doing an episode with, Sweet Tooth from the 1977 New Adventures of Batman, because that hits a new low for And if we do the best episodes, we also have to do some of the ones that aren't as
That's fair.
as revered.
I'm gonna have to watch that.
Oh, be careful. That's all I
Okay.
got to say. Don't be prepared for Shakespeare. That's for sure.
All right. Now I'm even more intrigued. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode of Batman Animation. Where can people find you, Patrick?
All over the interwebs, internet, ethernet, whatever they're called, at thecflats.com, Patrick Johnson 75 on Instagram. And if you're on Spotify, look up the C Flats. Got tons of music on there. And every now and then, I'm on these episodes with you. Batmanimation. Batman on Film.
And
That's what I say go to before anything else.
and the Facebook group,
Oh, yes.
too.
The Facebook group. Yes, sir.
Lots of good conversations and Batman-related posts there. As for me, obviously, batmanonfilm.com. As of this recording, Catwoman 61 came out today, so you can catch that review on batmanonfilm.com. And next week, I should have the conclusion of Tom King's Joker. I was going to say year one, but that's next month in Batman. It is Tom King's version of the Batman #1 story, but told in a modern context and stretched out over 4 issues with just harrowing art by Mitch Gerads. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend the Batman part of the Brave and the Bold comic book. And hopefully they collect that in a trade so more people can read it, because the price tag for the individual issues is pretty hefty, and it's not just Batman. They have all sorts of different solo stories for other characters that honestly I haven't bothered to read, but Batman stuff has been excellent in that book, so give that a look. And of course, obviously, Batmanimation, we just did a couple episodes ago, Mask of the Phantasm retrospective, and lots more to come in 2024. So I've got nothing else, so I think we will shut down the power in the Batcave for today and have announcer Rachel take us out. Thanks for listening, and Patrick, thanks once again for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Batmanimation, a BatmanOnFilm.com podcast revisiting the animated TV and film adventures of the Caped Crusader. Follow Batmanimation on Twitter @Batmanimation. Follow BOF on Twitter @TheBatmanOnFilm. Follow Jet on Twitter @BatmanOnFilm. For Jet and Team BOF, I'm announcer Rachel. Batman on Film, authoritative, definitive, the original. Established in 1998.